Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, it's Friday, and we've got another podcast coming for you this week. And this week's a good one. Bug Jam in the UK, started in 1987 by Brett Hawksbee. This week is that story. So Brett Hawksbee's been quite influential in the UK VW scene. He's really had a huge impact on the show scene in and of itself, just based on the starting of Bug Jam. The show that never could, that turned into being the monster of the UK, and it's been going for 38 years. So it's an incredible story, and it's just an enthusiast who started out wanting to do something a little bit better than the last show he went to. So story's a bit familiar, but at any rate, before we get into too many details with that, don't forget to support those that support Let's Talk Dubs. VW Trends magazine out today with the latest issue. I haven't received my copy yet, but I've seen plenty of people receive their copies online. And apparently there's a little blurb at the top that my Ghia, Zorba the Ghia, is in the magazine. Not to be confused with the go-kart on the cover. But that's a story for another podcast, which will probably be next week. So go subscribe to VW Trends Magazine today at VWTrendsMagazine.com. Also, Ross Wolf, high-quality aftermarket parts for enthusiasts, by enthusiasts. Go check them out today. I was just putting on some new Ross Wolf stuff on the chop top recently. So had the foam air cleaners done and was checking my sealed dipstick the other day, which I really dig the dipsticks that are a locking dipstick. So if you guys want some cool accessories for your car, thought out and engineered for enthusiasts by enthusiasts, go check out Ross Wolf. And don't forget to use the discount code LTD10 for 10% off your order at rosswolf.com. Icon Pistons, you want some of the highest quality aftermarket parts made today. Pistons, high performance, special coatings, different wrist pin heights, all the good stuff. Click on the link below where it says buy Icon Pistons here, and you'll click to one of their distributors that I feature each week, so you can buy yourself some high quality aftermarket parts for your Volkswagen. So buy the best for your Volkswagen. If you care about it, go get yourself a set of Icon Pistons today. Oh, where do we start? Got lots going on. And also wanted to tell you guys, when I'm sitting here in my studio looking at the desk, and I've got a pile of Cool Flow stickers. Shout out to the boys at Cool Flow in the UK. And with these stickers, what I'm going to do is include these in anybody that buys a purchase that picks up one crazy weekend poker run shirts that were extra from this year. Decided to sell a bunch of them. And so they're limited supply. They're on letstalkdubs.com. Go to the store, pick yourself up a one crazy weekend 2025 shirt, and I will include a variety of Cool Flow stickers with each order. So go check them out today and support your favorite podcast at letstalkdubs.com. Click on the store link. Also want to give a shout out this week. First shout out goes to Danny Arose out of San Bruno, California. Picked up some Let's Talk Dubs merch and a sticker pack. Appreciate him for supporting the podcast. I'm sure I did this one too already, but I'll give him another shout out. Albert Cipollari out of Chester, Maryland, picked up one crazy weekend shirt. He loaded up sweatshirts, all kinds of stuff. Man, I appreciate you for supporting the podcast. So he's in Chester, Maryland. And Chris Spicer, man, he comes to the show every year. Been a long time listening to the podcast, and I super appreciate him. He's in La Mesa, California. And if you're one crazy weekend, he drove the red bus that's electric powered. He works at EV West, and I'm going to have to get Chris on the podcast, and we're just going to have to do a podcast because we're gonna have to get down to brass tacks about him doing his own electric vehicle, his own electric bus, and just check it out and get some of the details on it. Because a lot of you guys are thinking about doing that stuff. Matter of fact, last time I spoke to Eric Meyer, who lives up in the Bay Area, or not the Bay, but up near Morro Bay, he was doing electric conversion 68. So hopefully, we'll get in touch with him. And if you haven't listened to Eric Meyer episode, you should really listen to that, because that is the origins of Vision Streetwear started with that. So yeah, lots of cool connections there, but for sure appreciate Chris for supporting the podcast, man. There's lots going on. I got a lot going on. I'm gonna have to have a roundtable next week because I got a lot of thoughts stirring in my head. We're gonna go over a bunch of stuff. Matter of fact, after I put this podcast out, I went through my list of people that have reached out to the podcast, and for some reason, the communication's been kind of weird coming through my email and stuff. And then I found the cache on my website of like all of the communications that I've had. So I may just take an episode and give you guys the feedback of some of the people that reached out to the podcast, some of the reviews, some of the suggestions for interviews and things like that. So I think it'd be interesting to do. And then I got a lot of thoughts, guys, a lot of thoughts. And, my thoughts, they have to be honest, because I got to be honest with my friends here that listen to Let's Talk Dubs, especially when it comes to the VW scene. But it's all good stuff, man. It's all my main focus for everything is for the hobby, to grow and build the hobby. And anything that I see that kind of stifles it or throws it off track, I just got feelings towards, and that's it. And I'm a guy with a microphone, and I just want, and you're going to hear about it. So it is what it is, but appreciate all the love and support you guys show me here at Let's Talk Dubs. So I'm grateful to do this podcast each week, to send it out for you guys, because I know some of you guys are as nerdy as me and give two craps to listen to a conversation about something that happened a long time ago in a place, in a land far, far away. But lots of cool stuff coming up. Trust me, it's good. So I had some questions about One Crazy Weekend for next year. People are trying to get rooms and stuff booked, and I haven't solidified some of those plans yet. It will be the first weekend in October. That's always what I shoot for. But I want to make sure I get you guys I want to make sure that you guys have the best experience possible. And I need some things to negotiate with that for the venue and some things like that. So definitely am planning on having an announcement by the end of this year. But go ahead, you guys can go ahead and set your calendars for first weekend in October, because that's when I do it, and it'll be that weekend. There's still some details I need to work out, so don't lock anything in just yet, okay, guys? But that weekend's for sure, and there's a little bit of adjustment on some of their stuff, but that's neither here nor there. We'll get you guys up to date on that. Probably drag George in here and do a roundtable next week, because George gets uncomfortable when his brother Bill just starts firing off. But I know a lot of you guys like it, so we'll do it next week. I'm going to drag him in here this weekend. We'll hammer one out. So, but this week's podcast, man, Brett Hawksbee, a guy that's been in the UK scene forever. He's authored a book about the story of Bug Jam, as to how it came together. Today, you're going to get a kind of sneak peek on that book. That book is really hard to find. If you can actually find the book about Bug Jam, it sells for over $100. It was a limited production, and it's really cool. Tons of pictures and things like that. Kind of a way a book should be made, right? Pictures from the event over time, maybe unpublished before, and some of the story behind the scenes. So that's a great story this week, and it's a guy with a dream who loves the hobby enough to have something become all-consuming so that he can look around and watch people have a great time. And that's the story of Bug Jam and Brett Hawksbee. Sometimes you have to personally sacrifice for the hobby because you just want it to be so good. So, and I totally relate to that. So on this week's podcast, let's get into it. Brett Hawksbee, legendary show promoter and game changer, on this week's Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the Bug like.
Okay, everybody. So on today's show, the network of Volkswagen people continues to keep getting smaller and smaller as we travel throughout the globe and make different connections here and there. And I've been excited to get this guest on for a while. Our guest today is going to be Brett Hawksbee. If you're not familiar with that name, that might be because you're from the States here, but he's been a hugely influential person in the VW scene there in the UK. He's the founder of Bug Jam, founder and promoter of Bug Jam, which is the first US style show in the UK. He's also the founder of the VWDRC, which is the Volkswagen drag racing in the UK. Also, car builders, built several cars, been featured in the magazine, as well as enthusiast, along with He's a contributing author to Volksworld throughout the years, as well as an author in his own right for writing a book 20 years after beginning Bug Jam about the story of Bug Jam. So on today's show, I'd like to welcome Brett Hawksbee. Brett, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill.
Hey, it's great to have you on here. And, you've done so much in the UK scene. And, the way we always start the podcast, right? I mean, you've got quite a resume. There's a lot to get through. But the way we always start the podcast is, what's your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens?
Okay, if I go back to the very, very beginning, just about when I was old enough to drive, there was a magazine in the UK called Custom Car. I think that came out about 1970 or something like that. But that magazine, although it had featured some VWs different times, the kind of car enthusiast world was a little bit down on Volkswagens, and by that it was Beetles, and I kind of bought into that because one of the first cars that I went to buy was a Beetle, and as a sort of 17-year-old, I struggled to work out quite how to drive this thing. I wasn't used to pedals that went down into the floor, and I'd not driven a lot of cars, so I passed on that one. And thought I didn't like them. But several years later, quite a while later, there was a guy in the UK building who had a kit car which was called a Madison, but it was loosely based, although much smaller. It was loosely based on the like Cord boat tail speedster,
right,
and that appealed to me, and it was built on a Volkswagen floor pan. So I acquired a 65 1500 as a floor pan, started stripping it down, and the car was in good shape. And as I was starting to work on it, I realised that just in terms of design solutions, this car was wonderful because all the cars that I've been used to in the UK and English-built cars and stuff like that, they weren't as well thought out. They weren't as easy to work on, for an owner. And over the years, it seems that's been a developing theme with car manufacturers to force you to do as much as you can through the main agents and whatever else. But the fact that this car was so well designed, in terms of just engineering solutions, I really fell in love with VWs. And then there was a show in the UK at that time called VW Action, probably about 85, somewhere around there. And I went to that having sort of a fresh interest in VWs and being influenced by a couple of people. A guy called John Daniel in particular was importing trends and hot VWs. So that was kind of where my interest was. It was the custom side rather than the stock side that appealed to me first. Mm-hmm. And VW Action was very much we call it pipe and slippers kind of show. It really wasn't that mad keen on people turning up with lowered cars and one thing and another. So back to Custom Car, a girl that wrote for it at the time was called Becky Adam, and she, in her page, which was called VWXYZ, she made a statement that she thought that someone somewhere should do a show for the burgeoning interest in like cowlook VWs. Mm-hmm. And that kind of resonated with me. I was very familiar with the people at Santapod. I'd raced a 70 Mustang, and I spoke to them about putting a VW show on, and they were like, yeah, okay. Didn't have a lot of money behind the idea.
Right.
So we did a deal with them where for the first sort of, 1,000 people or something that came, they just took all the money. And I think they thought that they would be taking us to the cleaners, because I think they expected 200 to turn up.
Sure.
But as it was, because of people like Richie King, and he was doing a lot of stuff down in Southend, and we got 4,500 to the first show, which defied all expectations. And it really was a moment, because we'd worked out what we were going to do, the content of the show, and when we were going to set it up. And it was a Sunday only, just one day. Mm-hmm. And we arrived on the Thursday to begin setting the show up, and there were cars there already.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they'd come a distance. I mean, one couple of guys in camper vans had come from Scotland, and they were already there by the Wednesday because they couldn't wait. And yeah, that first show really set the scene for what was going to be, and it still is, a really joyful sort of, full of camaraderie sort of enthusiast, what would you call it? Like movement,
right? Like for the young kids, the guys that are the people that are really excited about the scene, pushing the boundaries, stuff like that. Not the people that are kind of stuck in the box of the vintage shows type thing.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that did happen, Bill, just sorry, you were going to ask me a question, but one of the things that did happen that was really important was, well, there's two things. One was that most people that came with a friend. Yeah. Or more than one friend. They weren't necessarily VW people, but so many people that came to that first event without VWs immediately went, I want to get one. Right. So, within 3 years, there was 20,000 people at Bug Jam.
Well, that's insane. I put on a show that one crazy weekend here, and I've been doing it 6 years. It's been our 6th year. And it's, promoting and putting on an event in today's day and age it's a big undertaking, right? Just to be able to, I mean, there's the constant fear of like, are they going to show up first? And second, you need both the spectators and the participants in the event. And how long did you market this event, or was it just something that is just at the right time and people needed something like this?
Well, the marketing was largely, again, through couple of UK magazines. There was a very sort of, again, a buffery sort of pipe and slippers magazine that was far more tolerant than those that promoted the early VW actions. And they said, yeah, fine, we'll give you some, we'll give you some editorial and stuff like that about the upcoming show, etc. And also, again, Custom Car and Becky Adam, who was there at the time, and who was I think it was Clive Prue was the editor at that moment. But they agreed they'd do 3 months of pre-publicity, and they honoured that. Although the editor changed, I had to have a lunch meeting with Keith Hume, who was the new editor, who a lot of people out there know, and Keith his main concern was this kind of idea of misdirected litigation, I think, because he was, Custom Car were that involved in making a noise about the show. Mm-hmm. So we changed in association with to in cahoots with, right. And then Keith was happy with that. And they Custom Car was invaluable in promoting their first show. That said, we also did sort of tons of sort of photocopied flyers,
right? Guerrilla marketing,
and Yeah, did it amongst the VW people that we knew, and we spread these flyers out through everyone. Whether there's a guy, Les Wake, he was in Coventry. The German car company took loads, and the idea was to just stick them on every VW that we could find. So we did a bit of guerrilla marketing as well, That was what launched the show. And the thing that kind of got 20,000 people to turn up was from the second show, we did videos, and we sold videos to enthusiasts, which, was something that happened in the States already, nothing new. But a guy called Paul Watson, who he was on a TV, I can't remember the name of it. He had a TV show, a bit of a profile as a producer and stuff. He was a presenter on one show that was based in LA, but broadcast in England. And he decided he wanted to video it, and he did the 1989 video, and retained the TV rights. Well, I thought, well, yeah, okay, fine. I can't see it being on TV. Right. But he managed to get a youth program in the UK to show a 30-minute edit of the 1989 show on BBC.
Oh, wow.
Prime time.
I mean, that's massive. That is massive to get that kind of exposure.
Yeah, it was incredible. And Paolo obviously retained his TV rights, but it was worth it from our point of view, for the profile that the show grew very, very quickly. From the first show, we had visitors from Germany and Sweden and the Netherlands, Belgium. So it developed a kind of preeminent kind of profile in Europe, to go on to the thing about the VWDRC. I was thinking about it being that's the show, that's what we would do. But in actual fact, once we kind of launched with the idea of the Volkswagen Drag Racing Club, like all drag racing clubs, you need races, you need places to race at. Right. So very quickly we spoke to the other remaining sort of the other existing drag strips in the UK at the time, which was one in York and one near Stratford-on-Avon. And we, in 1989, which was the second year of the VWDRC, 1998, we had, I think, about 3 shows, which were all at Santapod, which was the first kind of competitive year of Volkswagen drag racing. But it within a couple of years, it was the biggest sort of single make drag racing club in the UK. And we were eventually promoting sort of 7 or 8 events to sustain a calendar for the VWC, and of course because the interest was there, and it helped to put shows on in different parts of the country.
Yeah, it's interesting because starting the show, then you need people for the show, right? So you're thinking, well, it'd be cool to have some drag racing Volkswagens out here. And then some other people see like, oh, you can drag race Volkswagens. Well, I'm going to build a drag car. And then you almost have to build your own crowd for this event that you're creating. And then that in and of itself gets these guys that they might be part-time engine builders or enthusiasts, that they just start going down the road of eventually some of these guys are becoming engine builders and, some of the guys to be known throughout the VW scene, which is pretty incredible, because without the beginning of Bug Jam, it wouldn't have constituted starting the VWDRC, which wouldn't have constituted people getting into drag racing, which then, now you're saying that was the biggest single make drag race that the UK's ever seen, has been a Volkswagen show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Keith will know better than me, although I was there. Obviously, what happened was at that first Bug Jam, we had some off-road racing, and the guys there, we did have drag racing, but that was just like run what you brung type activity. Mm-hmm. And the Volkswagen Off-Road Racing Club, which was called the National Off-Road Association, didn't mention Volkswagens at all, but it was all VWs. They were really slick and organised with their element of that first Bug Jam, and they'd come to me, they'd done all their racing. I didn't get really involved in that. We'd built the course for them and left them to it, and they come back with all their results and all their trophies and everything else, and asked me to present them in front of the whole crowd, kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, the idea was that, well, that would be a model for how we should do, get more and more people interested in drag racing. So several of the guys that were instrumental in the formation of the VWDRC. I mean, I put the idea to Keith. Keith was all for it. Keith ended up with membership, lifetime membership number 1, I think. And it was with, obviously, it was a joint enterprise by, half a dozen, 6, 7, 8 people, mm-hmm. To actually get the Volkswagen sort of show on the road.
Yeah. Well, we're talking
some of those were raced.
John Mart, John Brewster,
yeah,
like a lot of the guys that have already been on the podcast.
Yeah,
but like
Bernie Smith.
Yeah, this is the genesis of where this all comes together. So
yeah, absolutely.
Giving everyone a reason.
It was great fun, but we never, we have this kind of guy. He created a movement called Back to 89, which was later on in the evolution of the scene, but it was sort of saying, those times were the best kind of thing,
Right.
And the way that, what I was going to say, there's the early racers there, the guy John Brewster, Bernie Smith, Keith, Luke Theochari, and Pete, I can't remember Pete's surname. They had a car called Moody, which was insane. And I mean, John Brewster's car was insane. He's the only guy I think that's crashed at every track in the UK. Yeah, all these guys, we did it because it was such fun and it was what we wanted to do, and we were living our best lives. But it never really occurred to any of us, I don't think, that people would be interested in what we were doing, 35 years later.
Right.
But that's great. I mean, it's not something anyone expected. And I mean, we looked up to a lot of the racers in the US. We relied on a lot of them to make kind of relationships with, for to try to get somewhere near the performances that were being produced in the US, and we did that pretty well. And the outrage car that a guy called Brian Burrows bankrolled, although he didn't drive it, that I think it was 92, so only 5 years. What is that? 5 years after the first Bug Jam, that ended up with a listing in Hot VWs as the fastest VW at the world record, really? 8.7. And that was set at Avon Park. So, we were doing good stuff, but it's quite weird to think of people in the UK looking at those kind of pioneers as legends in quite the way that we did look at the US races. But to some extent that's very flattering, and that's something that happened with a lot of people's sort of take on what it was like then is of interest to people now, which is great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's Carol Shelby has a quote saying, "If I knew I was making history when I was doing it, I'd paid more attention." It's like it's one of these things where I think the enthusiasts are so excited that someone finally puts an event together, and then you get this event put together, and now everybody has this reason, this place. And one of the things, with my event, One Crazy Weekend, my wife and I are sitting taking a break, and it starts out this great idea that's going to be, I'm going to have so much fun at my show. And then your show happens, and the entire time you're going 100 miles an hour, making sure all the little things are happening that are supposed to be happening.
Mega stress.
Yeah. It's just like, it turns into like, and for me, I was sitting in the restaurant at the hotel, watching people walking in and out of the door from the car show outside, walking to the casino, and just seeing the energy these people had. And for me, it was like, that was so satisfying to be able to see these people having fun, because it was like, that's what I wanted, when I would go to the shows and I'd have a good time. And it was like, for me to see that these people are having fun at my event was really something that makes you feel good. It makes you feel like it's worth it, because sometimes it becomes so crazy as a show. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, with this show initially starting out being like, it's like they're scoffing at you, and they're like, yeah, we'll see how many VWs you get to show up. And then it just goes bananas. And then all of a sudden it's like, great, you'll make money, I'll make money, I'll make money enjoying what I'm doing. Everything comes together. But it's interesting, every time something starts to get traction like this, that's when you start to see, like, do you start to see where people are like, well, kid, we gave you the event first time, but now you're doing really good, so we're going to charge it. And all of a sudden it's like everybody just comes after you with like, well, let's see what we can do to get our hands, around this thing. It's interesting when you try to build something organic, and it's, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Like, how was that experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it happened everywhere that we took a show. The landowners would be, they wanted the rent money initially, when they knew nothing of the shows. But everywhere we went and put on a show, within a year or two, suddenly they needed twice as much rent as we'd paid the year before or whatever, to the point that I mentioned Brian Burrows, and after 92, we were promoting together. He'd been sponsor for a race car that I bought. It was the Troy Bill and Sofine Porsche Speedster. If anyone remembers that. And I bought that at the end of the track in Pomona. What am I talking about? Not Pomona. At the end of the track in Bill, I can't remember the name of
in the States, Phoenix Bug-A-Rama?
Yeah. Hold on, what's the matter with me? I'm now the ripe old age of 70, so please allow me a senior moment.
But it was here in the States, in Colorado. Well, Sofine was in Colorado at the time, and then they also spent some time in Texas as well.
It was down. It was the actual event was it's a place it's got like a boat drag strip next to it.
Terminal,
Phoenix.
Phoenix Firebird Raceway. Yeah.
Yes, finally got there. I do apologise. I hope you can cut some of that shit out. So I'll start off by saying I bought the Troy Bill car along with my partner there, a guy called at the end of the track in Phoenix, and it just run like 10-1 or something like that. So yeah, we were happy to buy the car. And here's the extent to which we were kind of VW people. We then went to Pomona, and there was a beautiful convertible Mercedes 190 SL, which was the same money as we paid for this fiberglass race car Porsche replica, and we were sorely tempted, simply because, you know, from the way already the Gullwing was you know an absolute classic. I won't, you know, go on about Mercedes too much, but and we figured these cars were gonna make serious money at some point in the future. But no, we couldn't not buy the race car, so we bought the Speedster replica and the I don't know who the guy sold. I think it was about $9,000. This SL for a Gullwing. No, this was a convertible. Same. Late 50s, same thing, but convertible rather than a Gullwing. But I have a friend who has one here now, and whereas the race car is still in someone's garage, you know, it's worth what someone will pay for it. The Mercedes would probably be like $150,000 now here. But there you go. But what you were saying about everybody wanting a piece of you. Brian, as I say, who was originally a sponsor of that car and went on to, that was called Outrage, and he in his own right built Outrage 2, which eventually took the, you know, in actual fact it was in Hot VWs it was listed as a VW world record, but as far as we could make out at the time, 1, 2, 3, go. As far as we could make out, it was actually the fastest 4-cylinder car in drag racing anywhere at the time, which was quite an achievement. It was between that Outrage car and Dave Fultz and Tom Shue for some time, and I think they probably eventually took the record, but they came over. Anyway, the reason I was talking about Brian was that Brian and I promoted from about 72, and we 72, 92. And because of every landlord, you know, holding out bigger and bigger hands, we actually bought a venue and created a event showground, nice. which was called the National Auto Showground. We did some good shows. It had a bit of a local problem. It had the locals in the area where it was were very displeased that people were descending on them in all sorts of cars on their weekends, and it closed fairly quickly. But you know, that's life. But yeah, no, that's been one of the things that made it kind of more and more difficult to sustain. But obviously, the popularity. Whereas in the early years, we were producing a small kind of clique of people, you know, some were listed as sponsors and whatever, were putting together shows which formed the absolute kind of core of the VW enthusiast shows, particularly sort of the Cowlook sort of style. Yeah. I've lost my train of thought again. What was the last thing I said?
Well, we're talking about as you guys bought that parcel to create your own your showgrounds, and then that didn't last very long. But I mean, you know, with that being at the peak moment, right? Like from the mid '80s to the early 2000s, the Volkswagen scene is going quite strong and I think part of the advantage you guys have is there's a few years behind that the UK is, right? Because as you guys are getting the magazines and things like that from the States, you guys have your own scene in and of itself, but it's kind of always looking to the States to see what's going on a little bit. So you guys have a couple years lag time between what's going on here and what's going on there, which is an advantage for you guys because it goes a bit longer. But I remember, here, and the first shows I went to, I think was in 89 or 90 was the VW Jamboree, and just going down there and seeing all these Volkswagens. And it was just chaos. It's just like the coolest cars, the wildest things. Everybody's young and full of energy. And, it's definitely a different scene, but I think it's, with the show coming on right at the right time and then being an enthusiast and all of a sudden kind of having to force yourself to be a promoter. I mean, you start being a promoter. I think all of us do, as like, we go to shows and we're like, wow, this show it could be so much better. And then you think,
it's a control.
I know what I'll do. Thing. Yeah, I know what I'll do.
Yeah.
I'll do my own.
Yeah.
And I'll have mine different because I'll have this and I'll have this and I'll have this. And then you do it and it works. And then all of a sudden it's like, great, I can't wait to enjoy my show. And I think it's this year. It's like next year I'm going to have more help. So I'm going to be able to enjoy the show. And it just seems that it's always this pressure putting the event on. But I think it comes from not wanting to be like so much of the scene, but like saying, listen, if no one's going to do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put this event on,
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning, it was, look, it's going to cost this much money. So there were two other people that I had, a guy called Kevin Riley, who never did anything else again in that field, and Cliff Watkins, and the three of us said, okay, well, we'll raise that between the three of us. Mm-hmm. And if everybody comes and has a party, but it's not enough to pay the bills, well, we can take it on the nose. It wasn't kind of world domination sort of scheme. It was, it'll be fun to do. And it was fun to do. And obviously, with the caveat that there are lots and lots of things about shows, that people don't realize what's going on under the water.
Behind the scenes,
but that spirit led a lot of people to put shows on all over the UK. So from having, 5 or 6 shows in a year, the peak kind of VW show level in the UK, there's probably, almost 5 or 6 a weekend, through the season. That's because lots of other people, obviously you couldn't do that many shows yourself.
Right.
But and the formula to some extent was the same, in a lot of shows. There are those that had drag racing and those that didn't. And different shows introduced different elements and people fed off each other.
There's always, shows with drag racing. It's interesting, especially the UK versus the US, kind of how people do shows here. In Southern California, they have a show just about every weekend, and it's a different one here, a different one there. And then you have things where it's an anomaly and it becomes something like the classic weekend, which was by osmosis of different places. Like, well, this event's going on Sunday, we'll do something Friday, we'll do something Saturday. And then what you see, what happened in the Southern California scene is promoters start fighting for position of whose weekend really is it. And then venues change, things change. And then it starts to just lose its luster. A lot of people kind of grow out of the scene. They'll get families. They'll no longer be as invested in their hobby, and so many things change. And then it's trying to figure out, because when you have something like Bug Jam, where it's just this magic, right? It's just perfectly timed. It's needed in the scene. There's nothing else like it. And then it takes off, and then it kind of starts this fire in the UK where everybody else starts doing their shows, which is great. And people think what's interesting is people think as a promoter, like, you don't want other shows, but other shows will feed into your show. It'll feed into the greater good of the hobby, which is, I think, sometimes, because I've seen both sides. Like me, I've risked a lot putting my event on because I want to see it be successful. I have a long-term vision, and it's like this year it started paying off as like it didn't cost me out of pocket up until the very end, and it broke even type thing. But it's for me, it was more like we've reached what I think will be. I don't want it to be more than 400 cars. That's manageable. More than that will become chaos. It'll be more because we're doing it in Las Vegas. It becomes a gathering event where people fly in from out of the country. It's a 3-day event, which most events in Southern California, for them, it's like a 20-minute, 30-minute ride, 45-minute ride from their house. I'm coming from Las Vegas, so it's a 4-hour ride for me, grabbing something and going over a crazy mountain range. So it's like when I started doing the shows down there, it's like, okay, you finally get to the classic weekend and everybody leaves the show by 12 o'clock because they've got to travel back home on Sunday, which, I've talked to friends that have come to the classic. They're like, you go to a UK show and it's like a festival, right? It just keeps going to the night and all this stuff. And in California, it's like midday, mid-afternoon, everyone starts to leave and it just seems so odd. But again, I think it's because of the volume of shows and things that are there. But with all the things going with Bug Jam, it's like the early days seem to be the best because there was a little bit of naivete that you had about the bigger picture of everything. And the bigger it got, the more eyes were on you, the more people were demanding out of you. And everybody thinks it's almost like I don't want to say extortion, but it's like people just watch. It's like, well, that guy's got to be making a ton of money and I'm going to get my piece out of it. And it's so frustrating because you're just trying to build a good event. And then when everybody starts trying to attach themselves to it, it just becomes almost sometimes, kind of not worth it. I've seen from other promoters that have done stuff where it starts out in good fun and there's always a side to it where it just takes the fun out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing with the shows in the UK is the sort of the shows that became successful were promoted by real enthusiasts and were put on for the right reasons. Now, if they made money doing that, then that's great for them. Everybody's happy. The shows that are cashing in, if you want, on the scene. There were several of those, even in the early days. They didn't have the right approach, elements, ingredients, whatever, and some ended up costing their promoters a whole load of money. Sometimes because people weren't even fooled by their marketing, and didn't just, they didn't get the attendance they needed and stuff like that. But I think all throughout that, I don't know what it is, 30, getting on for 40 years now, 38 years. As long as people have put their shows on in their kind of part of the country. Obviously, they want people to come from far and wide, but at the end of the day, they're kind of, a lot of them tend to be fairly regional events. But if they're all run by people who kind of do it for the right reasons, then there's no reason it shouldn't, carry on, into the far future, as long as there are VWs left.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But I think the more difficult thing is to kind of reinvent the wheel and keep that level of enthusiasm. And it's happened in there, I'm sure here, in things like the hot rodding scene. It's become a bit generational.
Yeah.
And the people that most cared about it, and it's true of the VW scene as well, the people that most cared about it, they kind of initiate their children into the VW show scene, and their kids have bought and that's a really cool thing. When it's father and son and stuff like that. It's good that that's happened, rather than the scene just wither on the vine. But it becomes increasingly difficult, I think, because there comes a point when everybody going to a show thinks they've seen and done everything there is to see and do.
Yeah, I think there's also you know, I also put on a local swap meet here in Las Vegas, just a general automotive swap meet. And I get guys every event we put on, and Las Vegas is only so big. And they go, you should do this every month. And it's like, that would absolutely ruin the event, because the problem is we don't have the population to sustain it, meaning we don't have that. No. It's not like we're selling out if we were selling out, it's like, let's do it every month. But the reality is, what happens is someone says, you know what, I'm going to skip this one, I'll go to the next one. It's like me with the Octo show, right? I go to Octo, it's the same thing. It's pretty similar every time that I go. There's a swap meet, bus show, whatever, and it's like, it's 3 times a year, and I'm like, if I don't go to this one, I'll just go to the next one. What am I really going to miss? You know, and there's, for those guys down there, it's local, it's fun, they get together 3 times a year. For guys out of town, it's like, okay, I'm going to be $500,000 in hotels, and I'm going to do, you know, X, Y, and Z. And then I got to get to Cal, you know, there's a lot more logistics in it. And so I think sometimes when you put an event on a little too frequently, it'll start to dilute, you know, the desire for it, you know, because they'll go, I'll just go to the next one.
And where someone's done something different, it's interesting here that, say, for example, the Volkswagen show. Now, Volkswagen, Keith got the red light. He said before, it was before Bug Jam, but I'm sure 4,500 people going to Santa Pod in June 87 helped the publishers' confidence, really, that was a viable magazine.
Right.
You know, it's all kind of symbiotic. The magazine was helpful to the shows, you know, in promotions, reviews, and all that kind of thing. But you know, the shows in the early days, Volkswagen would kind of publish often on you know, the weekend of a major show kind of thing, and be there. With a stand with you know, the new edition and that kind of thing. So, and you know, a lot of the people that were involved in the scene early on, it's not obviously just sort of, we were talking about racers and stuff like that, but as you say, engine builders, people that are both, but also car builders generally, people like Spike.
Yeah.
He was fairly sort of sallow youth when the early Bug Jams were on,
right.
and doing kind of credible stuff. But there were so many people that found their way of making what they love their job.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, you know.
No, it is. And without those events, you don't have the opportunity for some kid to be walking through, got drugged there by his buddy, and he sees a Volkswagen, and he's just changed his whole trajectory in the car hobby, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been really, really rewarding, I think, to have been involved. And I mean, I'm absolutely aware that, obviously, as you say, when all the kind of stars align, if I hadn't done it, somebody else would have. So, you know, it's no big thing in that sense, but it's nice to look back on and to see people at, you know, events now, and cars, you know, cars being built to a standard, which
for the show,
I think,
giving people a reason to build a car. Now, speaking of that, let's talk about some of your cars that you've had. Like, you know, being, you know, you start as an enthusiast, you become this indirectly. I don't think it was your long-term plan. Like, I'm going to be a show promoter for 20 years. I don't think that's how it starts, right? It kind of ends up that way. What let's talk about, because the Ghia, the Targa Ghia that was here at One Crazy Weekend, that was your car at one time.
It was, yeah. It came from LA originally, and I bought it from Richard King, or indirectly from Paul Watson, who I mentioned earlier. I drove the car around for a good year, and it was just kind of paint faded by the California sunshine. It's tatty around the edges, but a sound bass, and I had kind of a couple of things going through my mind. One was a guy called Jay Townsend had produced a number of Targas, Beetles in the UK, and I kind of knew I didn't actually want a Targa. I wanted a T-roof. Just from those, what was it, like the Firebird and stuff like that had like T-roofs and things. So I thought, that would be a cool thing to do. Yeah. So that was part of the plan. And the other thing was graphics. Now, at the time, I think that car was 89, we built it. And graphics, both sides of the pond, graphics were quite a thing at the time. And it's genuinely, I was looking for a graphical sort of scheme that I believed would be more durable than the kind of trick of the week,
last a little longer than scallops, or maybe be not as dated, right? Like something that would.
Yeah. So what happened was, I can't remember which magazine it was in, but Tom Taylor did some renditions for Type 3. I think it was a notchback, and it had like color block graphics. So rather than the kind of 3D element, which was popular, shadow drops and things like that. It was flat color, but it was still very much a graphical scheme. And I kind of took that as my starting point, swapped it to the front, whereas on the notchback, it was the back wheel that kind of, the graphics were at the back end of the car, if you want. Right. So we took that as a starting point, and we did it from the nose back, picking out a load of Porsche colours, which, Zeblau and Carmenrotten. So the white, the magenta and the dark blue were all Porsche colours. And the idea was to, produce a T-roof gear, because I'd not ever seen one. Right. And the other thing was to produce one that had a graphical scheme that would sort of stand the test of time. Now, I eventually sold that car. I had it for about 10 years or something like that. I eventually sold it to a guy. And I didn't see the car again until I got a phone call from Spike, from Andy. And he said, look, I'm refurbing, touching up the gear for a guy that's bought it. And it would be really nice if you could come down to the workshop and see the new owner and have, the new owner meet you. So I said, yeah, okay, kind of, that sounds really good. So I went and did that. Now, the paint was laid by a guy called Andy Barry in Southend, and genuinely there was very little, and we're now talking probably 2013, something like that. And so nowhere near 89 when we put the car together. Right. But Spike did say there was very little that you had to do to that original paint scheme. Now, they eventually did redo the whole thing. Yeah, they eventually did restore to the whole car to the extent that it needed it. But I found out, I didn't know that the car was going out to US. Vegas. But
I tell you,
I
it had quite an effect here. I mean, it was definitely a car that was, there was a crowd around it most of the day. It was pretty incredible. And, you know, I don't know if you saw the new interior they did with it, but the interior, the door panels match the exterior graphics. So
cool.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, the way that they've redone the interior, it kind of ties the whole car together real nice. And it really, the car obviously looks like it was built yesterday. It's still in great shape. And, you know, it's done its job, right? It has the timeless graphics you were looking for.
Yeah, I think we did achieve that. I'm really pleased about. But yeah, the fact that car. I mean, there can't not mention Bernard Newberry's Ghia, which I think has been seen out there as well. But that in it, so that was a car, a crossover car, because it actually won 1 year the sort of the top accolade in the hot rod world.
Yeah, that was a time in probably the mid to late 90s where you started to see some of that hot rod billet, that type of stuff starting to bleed into the VW scene. And Bernard Newberry's Ghia was incredible. The kind of the open coupe, I think it was is it dark green? Is that the color it was?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Jade green. Yeah. That was a lovely gift. Yeah.
What was interesting about that time in the scene was that people weren't afraid to push the boundaries and do something different. And we had this debate the other day. The guys from Ross Wolf and I were on the phone because we built some 80s kind of throwback cars. And they said, oh yeah, the only way you can get away with doing anything really custom anymore is to call it 80s. And then everybody will let it fly. And I said, I don't know if I agree with that. And I think what's happened in the scene is the cars have become more valuable. So everybody's attitude is they want to customize them, yet keep it. They're everybody's gone because it's got so expensive to restore them. Everyone's kind of started this restoration preservation from the resellable side. And I think that's kind of snuffed out a little bit of the creativity. You know,
creativity, yeah.
Because back then it was if you don't like what I did with mine, go buy one for you and do your own and see what you can come up with. And that self-expression, which I think, you know, I tried to pull that off with Zorba when we just built the last car that I did with Spike, and it was, you know, it's a Type 34 Ghia, which they're a unique car. I didn't go with a factory color, interior, did custom wheels, custom paint. And I think that's what makes that car resonate with a lot of people, is that it's still, there's no major radical body mods on it. And the kind of conversation I was having with the guys from Ross Wolf was that, but what do you do to a Type 34 Ghia to make it better? You know what I mean? As far as like customization. Yeah. And so the paint, the interior, that type of stuff. But we've kind of seen a little bit of that wane. And I think it's because, you know, I had this exact conversation the other day. I said, there was like this quote unquote German folks look, which now is essentially the entire look in California. Almost every car is really built to that template. So it really can't even almost be called kind of a German folks look or LA style or however they want to say it. That's just the way people are building cars in Southern California for the most part. Let's say 70% of the cars are being built stock colors, stock style interiors, lowered, big wheels, you know, and that's it. You know, maybe modified motor, maybe not, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Bill, let me tell you, sort of left field idea, but people, you know, they say you only regret what you didn't do, right? Kind of thing now, because of, you know, the time, the period doing the shows. Actually, this is around about 2012, 2013. We had a American style diner near Colchester in England, and that was taken at the time. But at the time, I had a Type 34, which the original plan for that was it was a UK car, sound bass, very good bass. But what I wanted to do, because I wanted to do something like totally different that no one had ever done, and a lot of people have that desire. What the plan was to restore the car as well as possible, but the kind of creative side of the car was almost a kind of the plan was very cartoonish. The concept really was, the like the devil guy and devil girl sort of logos. What I don't know what you call them, but the idea was that the car would be stock and black and essentially a restoration, but few little things. The idea was you remember like tin plate cars of the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. Yeah. So the idea was that it'd have cool wheels, but also like London taxis have these massive hubcaps, which are quite like the Japanese or German tin plate, just sort of pressed. And on the tin plate, they'd do things like they'd screen print a wheel on that disc. If you follow me. Yeah. Okay, so the idea was that and frequently they were just slightly misaligned when they did the screen printing and stuff. So that was the plan, was to have the car as stock, but be able to add these bits to it, so that it assumed a far more cartoonish, more say like a tin plate gear. And the final sort of pièce de resistance of the concept was to have the car shown on a pedestal, which was actually like a car box, a tin plate toy box kind of thing. That sounds, that's kind of pretty out there, and that's one of the things I regret never having finished, because I ended up selling the car to someone else because I was too involved with the diner. But I know, going completely off the subject. Well, no,
but that's what I'm talking about is the drive to be creative and to try to do something different in the scene and not concern yourself with the resale value of the car because you're building it for yourself. Not concern yourself with what other people are going to think because you're confident in your own ideas. And we've kind of moved into this realm of like everything needs to be built within these boundaries, of always being able to return it back to stock or doing this, and that has stifled the creativeness in the scene, I think, to some degree, but we're starting to see some of that pull out, and I think with Bob Daniels doing in 2018 or 2019 at the Prado show, doing kind of an 80s gathering. The 80s gathering here at One Crazy Weekend was massive. I mean, it was just like all I got was positive feedback from all the people. Like, they loved seeing these cars. It's inspired some people. I've seen some people post online like, man, maybe I might build kind of an 80s vibe car. And I want to get away from trapping it in the 80s. And I want to say, just build a car that you want to build your dream, which was kind of what we were doing back in those days. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the beauty of the kind of timing really was that, price-wise, I suppose it's how out there, when Ford produced their new V8s, they got stuck into earlier cars, from the 30s or whatever. Volkswagens in the sort of mid 80s, road legal Beta was pretty inexpensive. So you could afford to be a lot more creative, take more chances than now. When something's really rare to start off with, I mean, even back then, it became fairly quickly sort of questionable whether split windows were fair game or whatever, or whether they should all be brought back to stock.
Right.
You know, and I think that's what the kind of availability of the stock, which obviously dwindled over, you know, the attrition of many years. But when the cars were that plentiful on the second-hand market, you know, people could do stuff creative, take chances. Whereas, you know, if I mean, say buses, things like that, I mean, no one's going to be doing a kind of out there bus, I don't think, anytime soon, because the bone stock, you know, are beyond stock sort of restoration. You know, the millimeter perfect sort of perfect paint kind of restorations attract such huge money.
Yeah, and there's been a bit of softening in the scene with respect to pricing, and I think what that's going to do possibly is it maybe have, you know, we talked about the other day with someone, is that these cars become so expensive that it then becomes a rich person's game, and then it's completely unfun. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. What is the point when it's you know, when you're watching early 911s, the SC models, which were really like the lowest level 911, and they're selling now for $50,000-$60,000, and you really buy the car, and you could buy a $25,000 996, and it's a 10 times better vehicle as far as build quality, performance, you know, drivability, and all that stuff. And there's a little bit of that's kind of moved itself out of the scene, I think, with people. You know, the affordability's pushed a lot of people out, and then it's kind of you know, that rich man's game. When they're done getting them and they're over it, it starts to soften a bit. But I think the creativity is, there's been, the group in the VW scene has been like, don't you dare do that to a Volkswagen. So many people will express their opinions, which I think there was a lot less of that, right? In the 80s and 90s, people didn't walk by your car and tell you what you should have done with that car. It was kind of like, oh, that's cool, that's unique, that's different, versus like, I can't believe you would do that to a 1965 Beetle, you know? So
yeah,
it's again, maybe it's a bit of nostalgia. Maybe it's me wanting to see a little bit more than your traditional cow look every time I open the magazine. You know, I'd like to see something a little different and watch people, you know, follow their passions. So, but you know, again, it's the cycle of the hobby. I guess it happens quite a bit. Now, what other cars besides the Ghia that some of the people may be familiar with that you were involved with?
Okay, well, I'm trying to think what was. I'm pretty sure, I can't remember what car. It was about volume 3 of Volkswagen or something like that, and that was a 65. 1500 Beetle, and it was very much, you know, over here, obviously the factory models were quite different. So it was all tail rail bumpers, and it was like bright yellow, and the one. Actually, no, there was one before that, which was a blue Beetle.
Uh-huh.
But they're in kind of early issues of Volkswagen, because at that time when I was running like Bug Jam and, you know, eventually a couple of other shows, you still had the time to build cars. So yeah, I mean, basically the early cars, although they were feature-worthy magazine cars, they were. One was a sort of fake sort of, so it was a 68 with upright headlights, and it ended up with, you know, what sort of all earlier stuff on it.
Right.
sloping headlights and stuff like that. And that was it helped to have a credible car in the shows, at the shows, so they were two that come to mind. Also, we did a few iterations of the Speedster as a race car. Also had a rail called Air Express, which was a rear engine, typical sort of junior or typical dragster sort of layout.
Yeah.
That again went through a couple of iterations, different paint jobs, different engines and stuff like that. It ended with the Ghia simply because the pressure of the amount of shows we were doing, whatever, contrary to what people think, Brian and I always wanted to do stuff to see what could be done and not to, tear the arse out of it, as it were.
Yeah.
We were always probably conservative with our kind of pricing and stuff like that. It didn't make us millionaires, and I didn't have enough money that I could say, okay, well, I'll do all these things and I'll just grab this pool of money and have somebody else build a car.
Right.
And I like getting my hands dirty. So, for the last, since like lockdown, I've built about 14, 15 Jap bikes.
Oh, really?
All sort of cruiser style.
Nice.
Air-cooled bikes, just because I like doing it, and then it's not a business, but it's something I can do, and kind of with the space available to me at home, then I can build a bike in the garage, but I can't build a car in the garage because it's 2/3 of it is should be in the house.
Right. The pile of stuff that eventually we're going to get to, and that's supposed to go somewhere, but it's now just occupied the garage. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. But no, that's why I did. That's why I kind of did these bikes. But car wise, there was they weren't kind of named. There was the early. They were nice looking cars. There was the yellow Beetle. They just sort of weren't shouty. They were kind of credible of their type, and
just nice, clean, something to look at the show. You weren't trying to steal the show or that kind of stuff. Like, it was just something
and if a magazine comes up and says we'd like to put pictures of your car in the magazine, then go ahead. That's great.
No, I think it's incredible the evolution of things that have gone on from you just wanting to start a show that's a little more than like you said, a pipe and slippers type event, and you want something a little bit more fun, a little more lively, a little more for the youth. And now here you are 70 years young, looking back at all that. And you got to feel pretty good, because you've really cemented your place in the VW history, which is in the VW hobby, the history of the hobby, because it's something that you did out of love for the hobby. And I think the success of the show and the longevity, I think that's specifically because of that level of desire to make something better, or have something that other people can enjoy. And that's really where you can see the payoff on that, is that it's lasted this long and it's got a reputation, The
other thing actually that I'm really pleased about is, I know of a lot of people that met at shows, and got married and had families, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
To think that, you know, it's all this kind. It's just conditionality. It's you know, if this happens, then this can happen. But I do reflect on that yeah, there are lots of people that the event maybe was important for very different reasons, you know, but
Right.
still, you know, it's made a difference to lives, which is just cool.
Yeah.
That, you know, that I like a lot.
No, it's awesome. You know, I commend you for what you did. It's a lot of work, and it's to some degree it's pulled you out of the hobby into a different role, but put you in a role where you've created something that so many people have gotten enjoyment out of, and so many secondary reasons that things have gone on that you should be able to look back at it and be really proud of what you've done. And the name Bug Jam stands in and of itself, you know? And so I think that's awesome. Yeah. I think that's awesome to do something like that. And it started with the passion for doing something a little bit different, you know? So I think it's great. You know, listen, I've enjoyed having you on and chatting with you about your history. And I know I know that's not all of it. There's lots more. But you know, we'll let you get back with your day, and we we'll get you back in the future when some other stuff is happening, and definitely appreciate it. Now, any people that maybe you wanted to thank throughout, you know, your history of doing this, that you might have think that you may have just want to give a shout out to?
I think a lot of them I've mentioned. I mean, if I'm going to talk about people over here that have, you know, in their own way done, you know, a lot, maybe in some cases a lot more. Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say, a guy that sadly didn't take up, there's a guy called Clive Housen, and he was editor of a magazine called Street Machine in the UK, and I actually didn't mention I'd gone to Clive first because I just at the time I liked Street Machine as a magazine, and it was doing, there's a guy Colin Burnham who was doing a car in the UK, and that was being featured sort of as it evolved in Street Machine. They were properly into VWs, and Clive had a Ghia, and he's kind of said. Noted on occasion that he turned it down. He said, "No, we don't want to be doing this because we're going to do our own show." And I went to his own show and went into the loo, and someone had graffitied "Remember Bug Jam." This show, it was a bit more pedestrian, should we say?
Right.
So Clive, if you listen, hope you're well. Keith's obviously done a fantastic amount over many years, and Richard King, again, you know, I wouldn't have been doing what I was doing if Richard hadn't been doing what he was doing. Yes, met some great people along the way. Remembering Rob Miller, who's no longer with us. He was one of the guys at the German Car Company. Paul Valentine at the German Car Company. Another Paul whose surname I can't remember. Jay Townsend, who had who did the Targas and did a range of steering wheels. Really creative guy. Everyone really who was involved in the early days, they kind of know who they are. Stu Betty for doing his Back to 89, and there are a lot of people here that have had a lot of influence on the way things have evolved. You know, I just
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just think it's great that it's still remembered, because at the time it was just life. You know,
that's it. Well, listen, I'm glad we had the time to chat about this, and I'm looking forward to next time I'm out there in the UK, which would be next year. Hopefully we'll cross paths and I'll get to shake your hand and get a picture with you. And you know, a lot of names that you mentioned, you know, Keith, Jay. I've had so many people that you've mentioned on the podcast, which makes me feel good that I'm getting good coverage of the people that made things happen there in the UK over the past so many years. Because really, ultimately, my goal with the podcast is just to document the history of who did what, where, and when, and actually have this for generations well after us, so that people can know who did what was done to get them where they're at today. So
absolutely, yeah.
Well, Brad, it's been,
and that was why I wrote the book.
Yeah, no, and the book is hard to find, and if you can find it, it's over $100 to find the book that you did, which is pretty incredible. So I've got my feelers on the lookout for one of those books to try to snag one, just because I think it's really cool that you took the time, because a lot of people don't do that, to take the time to document the history of how Bug Jam became Bug Jam.
Yeah, I thought I was, and everything that happened, you know, it kind of went from 87 to, you know, almost 2007, because I figured I'd be forgetting, and I'm right.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's great to have you on, and I wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll run into each other next time in the UK.
Great to speak anytime.
Yeah.
Take care.
Great. Thanks. Well, if you like that podcast, and I hope you did, make sure you subscribe to Let's Talk Dubs and share this podcast with all your friends that listen. We love when you guys share the podcast because it helps us grow. And that's how we do it. Grassroots, baby. We're growing organically, and I appreciate you guys. Don't forget, send me a message, pick up some merch. You get a shout out on the podcast. And remember, any purchases made until I run out, while supplies last, you're going to get some free Cool Flow stickers with your shirts, as well as a couple of Let's Talk Dub shirts, of course. And next week, there'll be stuff to talk about as well, because this week is, well, next Friday will be the end of the SEMA show. So I'm sure we'll have some SEMA content. And if you know what, if you want to see the SEMA video, make sure you go subscribe to Let's Talk Dub's YouTube channel. Also subscribe to George T's YouTube channel. But looking forward to getting you guys some fresh new content. And until next week, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.